Hello, this is Jennifer Parrish, Superintendent of Poquoson City Schools. I'd like to share with you the proposed budget that I gave to the school board on March 19th. First, I want to highlight two budget priorities that we had throughout the budget development process. One was to include a compensation increase for all employees, and the other was to add positions to support any new programs. You will see that we met both of those priorities as I move through this presentation. First, what I'd like to do is remind everybody of what we've experienced in terms of our budget work since fiscal year 10. Many of you probably remember that we've had to make approximately $5 million worth of programmatic and personnel reductions because we had to offset the loss of state revenue as well as increases in VRS rates and other cost increases. During this time period, we eliminated 54.5 positions from our budget. While we were losing enrollment, we still eliminated more teaching positions than we needed to. You see here that number was 11. We were able to net 2 additional teaching positions and put them back into the budget between fiscal year 14 and this year, but as you can see, we still need to add more teaching positions to meet our enrollment needs. Finally, on this slide, I'd like to highlight the fact that the City of Poquoson provided the school division with approximately $1.59 million in additional funding during this time period. These funds help prevent us from reducing further positions or eliminating additional positions from our budget, as well as allowing us in some instances to provide some compensation increases to our employees. I'd like to just briefly highlight some issues related to state funding and education. You see here a table that represents the work done by JLARC. JLARC is the organization that does research for the General Assembly. As part of this work in both 2012 and 2018, they ranked Virginia against all the other states in the nation in some of the categories that you see below. First, you see per capita personal income. This means as of last year, Virginia is ranked 12th among all states in our per capita personal income. Our per capita state taxes were ranked much lower at 33rd. So in other words, compared to most other states, we pay lower state taxes. Then you see here the per capita local taxes. There we're ranked 16. In part, this is because localities have had to increase taxes in recent years to offset the loss of state funding that we're receiving, especially to schools. Our state per pupil funding is ranked 40th in the nation. That means we are in the bottom portion of the nation in terms of how much our state helps to fund education. Now, when you combine state and local per pupil funding, you see we move to 24th. Again, this is because localities have had to pick up additional shares of education funding as a result of the loss of state revenue. And finally here, I've highlighted in red the average salary of public school teachers. What you see is, as of last year, we're ranked 29th in the country. That means our teachers are paid below the national average. As you can see from the top line, we are a fairly wealthy state. So for our teachers to be receiving less than the national average simply does not make sense. I encourage you in the coming months to continue to talk to elected officials in Richmond about state funding for schools across Virginia. Now I'd like to speak with you briefly about our enrollment projections. As you might remember, from 2006 through 2016, the school division lost 522 students. The good news is, from September 30th of 2016 all the way through September 30th of 2018, or this school year, we've seen an increase of 63 students. We do not include preschool students in this count. Based on the projections of the Weldon Cooper Center, which does all the demographic work for the state of Virginia, as well as our results from our early kindergarten registration, we're projecting that we'll see an increase of another 20 students moving into next year. Now let's talk a little bit about the projected increase in state funding. The first line shows an increase in SOQ funding of over $130,000. SOQ stands for Standards of Quality. These standards are the minimum standards that we're required to implement within our school division, and this is true across the state of Virginia. Let me give you an example of what one standard looks like. According to the Standards of Quality, we can have 30 kindergarten students in a classroom with one teacher. It's important to note that we believe this does not make sense instructionally, so we hire additional kindergarten teachers so we have the appropriate student-teacher ratio at our primary school. This means that we're going beyond the minimum when it comes to teachers in kindergarten. And this is true for all of our grades K through 12. This is going to be important to remember when I talk about compensation in a later slide. The next line here shows the increase in incentive and categorical funding. This funding does include the teacher pay increase for SOQ funded positions. Again, I'll talk more about this in a slide a little bit later in the presentation. The next line is the increase in lottery funded programs. That's a little over $39,000. Just as a reminder, when the lottery was first established in Virginia, it was determined that lottery funds would go to education, but they were intended to support construction and other one-time activities that school divisions engage in. Since that time, lottery-funded programs are now included in the operating budget. So in other words, we're dependent on the lottery in order to ensure that we meet our operating budget each year. What you see here are the net projected state funding increases. When you add all this together, we have an increase of over $543,000. Next, I'd like to talk to you about our projected cost increase, and in one case, a decrease. First, health insurance. We're seeing an increased cost of almost $160,000. This is another one that I will talk about in more detail in a later slide. You see here an increase of $13,000 to support our students who go to the Aviation Academy. We are partnering with Newport News City Schools so that some of our students can attend the Aviation Academy that's located at the airport. This is an excellent opportunity for our students to explore some career pathways. We will now be in our second year of implementation of sending students to that school. So for the next few years, you will see a slight increase in the budget until we level off and have students participating in the academy in all 4 grade levels. You see here that New Horizons Regional Center actually provided us with a decrease in costs this year. This is a result of some of our enrollment numbers in different programs. And finally, we have an increase in contracts and utilities of over $76,000. Just as you experience cost increases in your home, we do as well when it comes to different items related to facilities and other school endeavors. Finally, what you see here is a total projected cost increase of $176,874. When you add the total projected cost increase with the net projected state funding increase, you see that we're experiencing a projected budget increase of almost $367,000. Here are 2 additional budget actions that I'd like to briefly discuss with you. You see here in the first line, add 2 positions to staff vestibules for $80,000. As you may be aware, this summer we are going to add a vestibule to the primary school and also add a vestibule to the high school. This means the entryways for the high school and the primary school will be much like those at the middle school and elementary school. You'll be allowed in the first set of doors, and then we'll have to show ID and speak to someone before you're allowed through the second set of doors. As a result of this new program, we need to add staffing because somebody will need to sit at those 2 vestibules because they're not directly connected to our offices. Also, you see here increased funding needed to support the increased costs of athletic travel. Our high school has moved down in a classification due to the fact that we've seen the decrease in enrollment. As a result, when we get to postseason play, they are traveling much further for regional games and also state games. This has resulted in a need to increase our budget by $8,000. So those 2 budget additions give us a total of $88,000. Here's how we'll take care of the athletic transportation cost increase. In the year 2013-14, we created a new fee for students participating in athletics, and that fee is $60. We have not changed that fee since that time period. It should be noticed that students who qualify for free or reduced lunch may have their fees waived. All they need to do is simply ask, and we will do so. Also, we did some research and know that children who participate in City Parks and Rec and Poquoson Little League, as well as other youth athletic organizations, pay fees that range from $65 to $150. This budget includes a proposal to increase the fee, our fee, by $15, so the athletic fee will now be $75, which falls well into the range of fees our families are used to paying for their children before they enter high school athletics. By doing this, we will cover the cost of the $8,000 needed for the additional travel. Next, I'd like to talk about health insurance because this is always such a big cost for our school division. Throughout the last 10 years, we've done our best to absorb the majority of the increased costs of health care, especially during the time periods when we were unable to provide any additional compensation for our employees. We have done a lot of work in the area of health insurance. We originally had 3 plans. We now have 2 plans, one of which is a high deductible plan. Any new employees that begin work with us now only have the option to go on the high deductible plan. Some of these changes have helped to keep our costs down in recent years. The initial projection that we got for the increased cost of health insurance for our school division in January came in at a 14% increase, or over $300,000. We knew that in order to provide additional compensation for our employees, we had to get this increased cost down. So we pulled our benefits committee together again this year. It's made up of 3 teachers or staff members from each school. Many of the members of this benefits committee served on the one last year that helped us as we brought in our results from going out to bid last year for insurance companies. The Benefits Committee supported a recommendation to add a deductible to our POS health plan, or for what many would call our HMO plan. We will now have a $500 deductible for the individual, $1,000 for family. We know that many businesses and industries already have deductibles on their health plans, and also there are other school divisions that do as well. The other change that we are making as part of this proposal is to increase the co-payments for a primary office visit from $20 to $25, and then for specialist or urgent care from $40 to $50. As a result of the changes that you see above and some tough negotiating with our health insurance provider, our increase went from 14% to only 6.53% to a cost of just about $159,000, almost half of what the cost was in January. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about compensation. First, I'd like to talk about the budget that the General Assembly approved. In that budget is included a 5% compensation increase over the biennium, or for this school year and next year. I believe there was some misunderstanding in that people believed it included a 5% increase for next school year only. Also, it's important to note that for 2% of the compensation increase, it's only going to be good for September 1st, 2019 through June 30, 2020. So that means divisions, to include our school division, will need to cover the full cost of any compensation increase for July and August. In other words, we'll get no state support for those 2 months of pay. Also, as I mentioned earlier, the standards of quality are those standards that we must follow, and they really outline the minimum of which we need to do for students. Remember, I gave you the example of the fact that we could have 30 kindergartners in a kindergarten classroom with 1 teacher, but we believe that does not make sense instructionally, so we have additional kindergarten teachers. Again, this is true throughout grades K through 12. That means that the funding that's provided for the standards of quality funded positions is funding that's only going to 67% of our employees, because we've hired more employees than are included in the payment for the minimal standards of quality. Also, that funding only covers 62.5% of the 67% of those employee positions. What you see here is that the school division, which really means the locality, has to cover a large portion of any compensation increase. The state is not covering the full cost of that. This budget includes a proposal to ensure all teachers in Poquoson receive a minimum of a 3% increase. They'll accomplish this by moving up a step on our step plan. For those of you who have been with us for the last few years, you may remember that we transitioned to a new step plan, and this year was the first year full implementation of that step plan. So again, the teachers will move up a step, and then we're ensuring that additional funding is added to that move up the step so they get a minimum increase of 3%. There will be some employees who get a larger increase than the 3%, especially at the very end of the scale, where we give teachers a bump before they move on into retirement years. All other employees will receive a 3% compensation increase. This means that all other employees, or those who are not teachers, are going to have received a 5% increase over the biennium, just as was stated by the General Assembly. Our total cost of this compensation proposal is almost $500,000, or almost $500,000. Let's take a look at what this compensation increase means for our teachers. What you see here in fiscal year 19, which is this school year, that our average increase for teachers was 3.51%. In this budget proposal, you see that the average increase for next year will be 3.17%. Again, a reminder that no teacher will receive less than 3% as part of this proposal. Next, you see here the total biennium average increase, which for us is 6.68%. This is important because we need to stay competitive, not only with local school divisions, but also across the state. There is currently a critical teacher shortage across the state, and it has impacted us as we've gone to hire for specific positions within the school division. So we need to be competitive so that teachers will come and work with us. The last column shows you the average increased amount for teachers next year. This means that with this proposed budget, teachers would on average take home in their paycheck $1,661 next year. Here's what this means for us. As you may remember, we have a state funding increase of about $544,000 from the state. We're including the athletic fee increase that provides us an additional $8,000, but that's offsetting the $8,000 in the recommended budget actions below. Our net cost increase is about $177,000, and you see here that cost of compensation is almost $500,000. This means when we add these figures together, we have a total budget shortfall of $211,284 in my proposed budget. What you see here is that we're making a request from the city of a little over $211,000, which matches the budget shortfall from the previous slide. We are doing this so that we can support the compensation increase that we're proposing for all of our employees. It's important to note that if we do receive this additional funding from the city, it means that since fiscal year 10, we've received an additional $1.8 million over what the city was already using to fund our educational programs in Poquoson. Clearly, their support continues to be much appreciated. Just a reminder of the budget process. On March 26th, there'll be a public hearing on my proposed budget, and likely the school board will vote on the budget that evening. If they don't vote on the budget that evening, they'll do so on March 28th, and on March 29th, we'll forward our budget to City Council. The city manager will propose a budget for the city, and then sometime in May, the city will approve it. As we look from the present to the future, just again a reminder that the state has not fully reinvested in K-12 education since the recession and have in fact included a number of new unfunded mandates throughout the past years. This means we're still struggling in terms of funding, and as you may remember from one of the earlier slides, we still have teaching positions that we need to continue to add back into our budget. But also, as you saw on the first slide, increased compensation has been the priority for us and will continue to be in coming years. It's very important for you to note that the state still does not provide any direct funding for construction or maintenance of K-12 facilities. They did do some work so that there's more funding available for borrowing, but they did not provide any new funding to us to support construction or maintenance projects. As you should be or may be aware, we are doing a major renovation of the middle school. That's our PMS modernization project. The City of Poquoson is providing $17 million in funding for that project. Additionally, they're providing another $3 million so that we can do roof replacements at the primary school, at the high school, as well as some bus replacements. So that means we'll be receiving a total of $20 million from the city. If the roof costs come in less than the $3 million, that funding will be shifted to the middle school project. We have begun work on the PMS renovation project. I encourage you to go to our website, and you'll find there a page that is just for information about this modernization project. You can get to it from the school division's homepage or from the middle school's homepage. Know that we're updating it regularly as we take steps and move forward in the process. So I encourage you to take a look at the website periodically. You may also follow the PMS Modernization Twitter feed because we're doing updates in that regularly as well. We're certainly excited about the work that we're going to do in the middle school, and very grateful to the City of Poquoson for providing the funding necessary to make this happen. Thank you for spending the time to listen to this presentation. As is always the case, don't hesitate to call or email me if you have any questions or suggestions, or certainly come up to me if you see me at any school or community events. Thank you.